Hello. Welcome to OK Boomer by the Digital Wellbeing Initiative. This is a show where we show how digital addiction has been integrated into all generations. All over in the far corner, we have Tracy, who is a teacher currently teaching IGCSE drama at a leading school in Colombo. And right next to me is the wonderful Rajan. He is a trained epidemiologist. How are you guys today?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good. Okay. So basically, growing up, right? All of us, I'm pretty sure, had different experiences. I think apart from me and Shavi, but digital integration now has been massive, especially with kids growing up. Whether it's even us or y'all. But what's your experience with it now? Let's start with you, Tracy.
What's our experience with
Digital addiction.
oh,
Okay, first off, are you addicted? Do you think you're addicted?
maybe a little bit. I think I've been catching myself maybe kind of having to go to my phone a little bit too much when I have to get work done. And it's been a distraction, so it's like trying to make a conscious choice of like not looking at it, but catching myself every time I go back to it when I'm basically trying to focus on something else.
Yeah.
So maybe there is a bit of digital addiction happening there.
Is there a specific, like, is it social media or is it just like browsing through you?
It's Candy Crush.
Candy Crush. It's been social media, yeah, it is. And it's just the browsing, I'm sure you guys know. Like,
Yeah.
it just becomes like a mindless thing of you look at something specific or sometimes you go to look for something specific, get distracted by it,
Yeah.
and then you forget what you've gone there
Yeah,
for.
true.
And then you leave it to go back to what you have to do and then come back to it. So yeah, as much as I don't like admitting it, it sounds terrible saying it out loud. But yes, to answer more directly, it is more social media. It is more specifically for me, Instagram, I would say.
Yes, same.
I think both of you are more, like, remember a time period, like probably a long time period where y'all didn't have like this digital technology or like smartphones or laptops or like apps. What was that experience like?
You're the older one.
But okay, Rajan, growing up, obviously it was way different than it is for kids now, right? So what,
Yeah.
could you like give us a small insight as to how it was?
Until the time that I went to university, we didn't have TV. So
Sorry.
we had a lot more time. So we had only a radio station with 1-2 channels, right? And so our time, we had a lot more time, really. We didn't have a phone at our own home. There would be one phone for every lane or something.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted to take a call, you had to go to someone else's house. And so international calls were unheard of. That was a long time ago, but it's not so long when you think about it. Computers, I think maybe I've owned a computer for 30, 33, 34 years, but like I was just telling you, my first hard drive was 40 MB.
I mean, a WhatsApp video now is like 40 MB.
And that was a big hard drive. So you can see the whole difference in terms of resources that we had. I was seated next to my father-in-law yesterday, and he's 86. And we were at a wedding, and I managed to keep my phone in my pocket. He couldn't. So it happens at every age.
No, true. I think my grandmother knows more about Facebook than I do. Okay. Right? If I have a problem, I go to her and I'm like, okay, how do I do it? And she's like, what? Man, this is your generation, no, you should know. But then, like, the thing is, technology has no bounds, especially when it comes to age. You could be 90, you could be 10 years, there's no difference because both are, like, technology is that deeply rooted into us now that there is no escape from it. For me and Shavi as well, growing up, we weren't part of how kids were right now, right? We didn't grow up with iPads on the tables while we eat. We are like that now, but
Right.
growing up, we weren't like that. Okay, it was, we go out, we play cricket with our friends, or it's just we meet them at school, come home, stare at the ceiling,
Right.
make noises into a fan, see, we were weird kids, but we were happy kids.
Yeah.
Whereas now, kids these days, they don't really know what it is like to find things by themselves other than when it's online.
Have fans to make weird noises.
Okay.
I think that generational gap is
Yeah, I think-
highlighted very much. Yeah.
Big generation. Okay, so, but Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm still baffled by that, but okay.
For us, at least when I was younger, it was different. And I'm sure it was the same with you. My cousins lived much more closer to me. And because you couldn't like instantly talk to your friends also, you were really hooked on to see them the next day. So then you're just like, you wanted to interact with them. Was it a similar experience for y'all growing up? Did y'all have that sort of like family and friendships, like living nearby, less urbanization?
Yeah, definitely. For me, growing up, when I was very little, it was just my sister and me. When I was about 9, we moved. We had to move house, and so it was like my grandmother's house, then where we lived, and then my aunt was on the other side. So we were all like in one big, like a big land that there were the 3 houses. So we would play together all the time with the neighbors' kids, and every evening there was a ritual of like playing together. But like, I mean, if you didn't want to, you could do your own thing
Yeah.
too. But that was the norm. Like you would meet, and if no one else was there, you would have your cousins.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of what happened in my scenario. Meeting friends was a little bit,
It's more of at school and then it's
yeah,
done.
like yeah, the traveling to a friend's house didn't happen quite often. So it was mostly the
Yeah.
school interaction.
What about you, Rajan? Back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah.
Can't even remember. Yeah. So actually, there are 2 issues. I think this was very specific for us in this country. So when I was growing up, we had a lot of relations, and now we don't have any relations living in this country because they've all migrated. So that was that as well. So every day I would go out, and I was the only child, so I would just go out, visit my cousins, visit family, and we'd walk. So we didn't. So it was primarily the extended family, and then we had friends as well. We certainly didn't call them or anything like that because that was not possible.
Because you have to go to the next lane. No?
Yeah. So it's quite different. I don't know whether it is worse. I think sometimes we tend to think that things are always better in the old days,
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
That's
I
very
think it's more that it's different. I wouldn't say anything more than that.
I think one of the core ideas here is that I think we all agree that there's some level of addiction that like every generation experiences. And I think one of the things that we talked about is like it's not that necessarily that the past was better, it's just that now the present is much more different. But I think one of the key things that like to jump into the next like question is like in terms of responsibility, because I think this is where like a lot of like our generation finds a bit of issue, because when we got these phones, when we got these social media, there was no one really to teach us how to like cope with these things. And it's not necessarily outward concepts, because like as much as like social media, that dopamine hit is there, like social validation, trying to like people please so much, trying to like make new friends, all these awkward interactions. I mean, obviously our parents' generation, even like all generations face that.
Yeah.
But I think boundaries weren't necessarily there. So I think in terms of that, like y'all have like kids who y'all have seen and taught and like interacted with. What is like your opinion on the role of like teachers and adults and parents in establishing those boundaries?
Well, that's a
deep question. but
um
but basically you've been teaching for a while as well,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
So has there been a difference of students, like the change because technology has been integrated into it?
I mean, the obvious one is the one that I think everyone talks about anyway, in the sense of how they interact sometimes with each other in the classrooms.
Yeah.
Like, for an example, it'd be video games over social media sometimes. And that was something I had with one student, that constantly on video games, so they're not going to sleep early, and like that impacts, so that kind of creates this vicious cycle.
Guilty by that. Yeah.
There you go, right?
I think we all are.
So that then impacts how you are within the classroom. You're kind of withdrawn, you're tired, you're sleepy. That's coming into play. I'm not seeing anything where they're so far removed because of social media, that coming into play within my classroom so far. I'm sure that's happening in general, where obviously, I don't know, like gossip gets
Yeah, it's easily spread.
rooted out, and then I don't know how you look at each other, or like whatever stories are happening in that platform is then echoed when they come into the environment of the school.
What about you, Raja? What do you think the responsibility falls upon adults when it comes to controlling technology or social media to kids?
So I have another view on things. I don't know whether we know how we define addiction, because one person might define addiction in a particular way, and another person may say that. Of course, addicts very often say they're not addicted. I think it's when you can't take a break. You just say, I just need one more, one hour more, 10 minutes more, or something on that. Then there is an issue. I find that even with me, for instance, I have deleted every game that has been on my phone, because I find that if I start playing, I'll keep on playing. So that's me. That's the way I deal with it. But I find then I might suddenly install something, because it keeps coming up in between some program or the other, and then I have to again get rid of it. So self-control is one thing. I don't know how much external controls are possible, because I think very often parents are technologically illiterate compared to their children, and so they just have to ask the children, how do I open your phone?
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's probably not possible. It's again an issue of what, for instance, what gives you identity.
Yeah.
If it is the various shots that I post on Instagram, or some background that I put and hope that people will get wowed by it, then you have a problem that is beyond the technology. I think it's just your personal issues. So we need to look a little deeper into that, I think.
I feel the boomer wisdom, being instilled into me after that. But yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I think this may be something that a lot of people my age have in common, is that I've come across a lot of adults who from my family to people at work to even my friends' parents. Because I have no idea what the experiences you were like, especially in the past, because I'm sure with the riots, with the war, it was possibly it took a physical and mental toll, and I honestly have no clue what that's like, and I think that in general people do need to be more sensitive and empathic. Please, this is not a blame game or anything, but a lot of adults seem to bring that up, because the moment we start complaining about addiction, or say this is really tough on us, to cope with online school, they often bring up that, and then I'm at a loss, because I'm just there's no way that I have any experience to draw on compared to that, and I want to be sensitive to it. So I feel that is also a barrier in communication. So because then it feels we are trying to be empathetic, but that empathy is not reciprocated towards us. So is there any way that you all think that that communication gap can be breached, especially? Rajan, do you want to?
Yeah.
So every generation experiences the same thing. I think our parents also probably told us, when we were young, we used to walk 20 miles to school or something like that. And you just can walk half a mile and get into a bus. And our children would say, we would tell them we walked half a mile to the bus stand, but they would want to get into the car and go, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just different experiences. And if people on both sides understand that we have different experiences, and with each experience comes different challenges, I think life would be so much easier, because every generation talks about the good old days. and how things were better, and how young people are not resilient, and stuff like that. But I just think that we were not resilient by someone else's standards. So I think this whole business of trying to understand how things are currently is a very worthwhile thing.
I think that's an interesting perspective because I think a lot of like adults, maybe not so much my parents actually, but like my relatives are just like, oh, that like younger generation. It feels like it's a bit like a stick that is used to like constantly like reprimand. So it gets difficult, especially because if you're constantly being told you're a failure, then it feels like at one point you're just like, okay, you're going to expect, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy at one point or another.
So I think I want to touch on something that Rajan said in the beginning itself, right? About time. So he said that we had a lot of time back in the day, whereas, 24 hours in a day, right? That hasn't changed. But then now, from the time we wake up to the time we sleep, it feels like we've had only like 10 hours a day. And that's because of, our mindless scrolling constantly. Before you know it, you're like, okay, 1 minute I'm on Instagram, and then 10 hours later, I'm still on Instagram. That's what you feel, right? So I feel like that concept of time has completely gone out of the question now, because I remember even when I was small, I used to be like, okay, once school is over, I come home, I'm like, okay, it's taking forever for this day to end because I have nothing to do. Like once I finish my classes as well, it's like, okay, just pure silence in my head. But then like now it's like, okay, I finish work, I come home, I'm on my phone, and like 1 hour later, my day is over. But to see, it's like work finished 5 hours ago. And like I find that completely like it's not supposed to be normal, especially now, right? Because time is like 24 hours has become 10 hours. And like, do you all feel the same as well? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think maybe there are other factors I think also that contribute to the time. It's not just the digital, even though we're talking about the digital aspect of things, it's just how much just you're traveling. How much time it takes to get from point A to point B, and then by the time you get there, you already don't have enough time, and then you just get on the phone for a little bit to do something, and then time has passed you by. So so you can wake up early in the day, and then if you kind of let yourself slip, it's the same thing that keeps happening. And for me personally, I feel like the phone absorbs a lot of that time. And it's difficult to kind of keep it away. So sometimes I will keep it away mindfully to not kind of get distracted by it, but then you're again on another device. You're on your computer, so unless you're not connected to Wi-Fi and you're just working, there's always that risk of it like happening. So somehow, your day tends to get shorter and shorter because of that distraction, and your mind's not staying where it needs to be, or you just don't get that breathable room. I think that's what Rajan's also. That's how I'm relating to what he was saying, where you just get to kind of absorb what you have done or what you have to do. That time is what has gotten shorter because it's getting occupied with all this kind of buzz and noise.
I think it's also come to a point where you can't really appreciate what you've done.
Yeah.
Because you're always on Instagram, and it's always like, whether it's a tap, whether it's a swipe, whether it's a picture that you're posting, it's constant validation that you get from people. Whether it's people you know, whether it's random people, and then whether when you complete a task physically, it's like, okay, damn, I did that. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, okay, I need to do more. And then you're like, okay, fine, I'll just spend time on social media. And it goes like, keeps going on and on and on. It's like a cycle, right? And that's where I think that entire concept of, that dopamine validation comes in, especially for kids these days, right? The reason why, like when I go to university at least, it's like, 2 hours is like, it's way too long. But then like after that, during the break, I use my phone. It's like the half an hour break has gone in like 5 minutes. It's that constant need, to feel good about yourself. So I think that's something that's very important. That's the impact that it has had not only on us, but do you feel like that impact has been there for you as well?
So I find that, in the good old days.
The good old days.
People always used to promote devices. They use the term time-saving device. So, if you could do something quicker, the idea was you're saving time. But actually what was happening is you were able to cram more things into that same amount of time. It's not that you were saving time. You were just cramming stuff into available time. So I think again, it's this whole business of deciding this is what I'm going to do. This is what defines me. And I'm not going to do anything beyond that. Like it's like workplaces. Now workplaces give you a work phone.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have your own time is no longer there because they are. Yesterday, someone was telling me they've got a job in marketing in some organization. And they're given a mobile phone from the organization.
Yeah.
And they want to call them at 11 in the night, at midnight.
Yeah.
It's a school or something, but they still want to call this person at that time. Whereas earlier they would finish work and come home, and they are not they can be contactable on their mobile, but they can choose not to answer it. So it's just being able to say, I don't do this.
There were boundaries back then.
You set your boundaries, and I think if enough people do that, others will agree.
Sure.
They will agree to respect those boundaries.
I think that's very true, especially within the workplace, because like digital technology, it's not just like the mental and emotional toll, but it's also the physical impact. Like the way that y'all are sitting very straight, it doesn't seem like it's like toll on you, but like I have to actually remind myself, okay, now I need to sit up straight.
Thanks.
I saw you just straighten it faster. But like,
Yeah.
and like eyesight is getting worse. And I'm sure that Tracy, you've seen it because like you worked with kids. Is there a difference you see within like the physical health like degrading over time?
Definitely. Yeah, I have to constantly tell my kids to sit up and look up. They're always like this, and their focus is down. So even they're getting used to listening but not engaging.
True.
So I have to constantly say, "Can you please eyes up?" Look at
Attention
me."
span.
Yeah.
It's more like come in and go out kind of thing.
Some of them have gotten used to processing that way for some reason. But yeah, that's also happening.
Yeah.
So yes, physically, definitely, and they're just fatigued. The body aches already, like back issues, all of those things are coming into play. And I think with the COVID years, that definitely added to it, because I know lots of kids who actually have serious issues now because of it. Yeah, so it's definitely, it's not just the mind, it is also physically impacting the younger generation.
Just a small follow up with regards to that. This question is actually for the both of you because I feel like the nature of school has also changed from when you were kids, and not just in terms of online. Because when I'm in school, and like I have cousins who are very much younger than me, and they're just like, oh, I'm in grade 1 and I'm going for like classes, and I'm just like, what class? Because the nature of it is such is that. And it's not that they want to go for it, but it's because like parents are like pushing them to go for it. So they have no free time. Mm-hmm. So I think in terms of coping mechanisms, what are like solutions that you think, or like changes that should be implemented to make sure that kids have those coping mechanisms, know how to spend free time? Because I think even vitamin D levels, like I take vitamin D because it's an issue for me. And I've seen like this happening for kids who are younger. Were much, much younger.
Right.
Wondering.
I just worry about this vitamin
deficiency.
How much of that is the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, telling you that vitamin D, everybody is deficient now suddenly.
Yeah. No, but I think that's also because we don't spend time in the sun.
Spend time in the sun, because
But that's an entire.
yeah, that's an entire thing. But
Well, it's debatable, but it's the place where it is actually impacted, it impacts our life is even this whole vitamin D thing. It comes up on the internet. It comes up on social. So many people are now looking at the internet when they have symptoms, right? They should be dead according to their research, and they get very worried. When in the good old days, the doctor knew what your problem was and you didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And of course, that was misused sometimes by the doctor. But now, the patient almost comes and says, please write me a prescription for this and this and this, because that's what I've got. And very often it's not right. But woe go beside the doctor who says it's not right. I found it on this website or something. Yeah. So, but what was the question?
The question was, what do you think, as someone who is like, who has been a practicing doctor and is a teacher, and Tracy is a teacher, what are practical solutions, like maybe just 5 minutes or 10 minutes, what are things that practically that you can do to make sure, like, ease your child's life in terms of like helping their like
Basically
health,
improve their mental health and maybe
physical health even?
I think that there's nothing I think that I can offer that hasn't been discussed yet, right? So it's like reminding them to take breaks when they're studying, or when you get home, maybe don't engage with your phone. But those are things, again, I think it touches on what Rajan said before. It's like those are suggestions you can offer.
Yeah.
And
Because if
then-
there was a solution, I would have taken it by now, 100%. But
Correct. So it's like you have to kind of mind what kind of works for you and who you are, and then make like a choice not to do certain things, because the information is all available.
Yeah.
And you know what's going to work for you. And there are so many kind of options that have been presented, and I think there's nothing more. I don't know. What do you guys think?
no, I feel like that it has come to a point where it's so integrated that
Yeah.
there can never be like a cure to it. There can only be like a temporary solution, but you can't really stop it from happening.
Correct. So you have to find a balance.
Yeah,
right?
there is
I
that
feel like you
balance.
just have to find what your balance is, and
I was just telling Tracy before we started the show that there are three things. There's information, there's knowledge, and there's wisdom. And I think we have enough information and enough knowledge. What is in short supply is wisdom. How
That's
do
why we brought you into the show.
age. No. So actually, if you don't learn how to be wise, information is now available.
Yeah.
It's not the thing that's in short supply. Knowledge, I guess, yeah. If you have your internet connection, you have endless stores of knowledge. Wisdom you can't buy on the internet.
Yeah, that's
So I would ask people to try and develop wisdom. So spend time with talking to not just older people, but also people among your peers for whom things seem to have worked well, and find out what works for them. Decide to have time when you can manage without your phone. Leave your phone at home sometimes when you go. I make if I leave my phone at home, it's often because I forgot. But I find I can cope.
Yeah.
And that's probably because I lived half my life without a phone, or more than half my life.
True.
But we need to give children and younger people that opportunity as well. So sometimes they have to force it on themselves. They have to create the boundaries.
So I think it's a balancing act between adults teaching kids how to establish boundaries, not just with other people, but also internally as well, and also a certain level of personal responsibility, and hoping that, and like having support systems around you.
Pressure that parents put on children and young people is immense. My parents never came to school. We never had a parents-teachers meeting. I can't remember my parents coming to school. During my children's time, we occasionally went to school, but now I see parents brandishing answer scripts and demanding that they recorrect it because they think that it's been done wrong. There's a lot of pressure, not only on children, but also on teachers. And I think we all need to get together and decide to vote on the side of sanity.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are just going, we don't know where we went.
I think one thing that we can like all take away from this conversation is that there needs to be more communication between adults and children, and like more than just active involvement, but also active emotional involvement, which would, like, I think help kids so much. So I think
Not over the phone.
yes. I think as much as these conversations are awkward and you have to push certain buttons, like with adults and like kids, and like maybe these conversations are going to be uncomfortable when you're having them. But I think this is something that the DWI or the Digital Wellbeing Initiative is something that we are all very keen on, like to actively have these conversations, not on like these kind of like platforms, but also like personally in your houses with your friends. And if you want more information about what we do, please head over to our website, which is www.thedwi.org, and you'll find information regarding what we do, from digital well-being, talking about addiction and talking about generational gaps and how to bridge them. I think it's also important to say a huge shout out to the production team for helping us with this, for helping us from the lights to the mics, and also to our guests. Your insight was so helpful and it was a really interesting conversation. So thank you so much.
So do check us out. You can not only get information, you can get wisdom as well. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.